Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's rendition of my LinkedIn Live series where we alternate between doing content UX audits and then diving into topics of interest to really like the B2B tech world, things about SEO, content marketing, and kind of the latest. So really quick, just going to do my sort of pre-flight checks here, make sure that the streaming is working. As a reminder, I'm streaming to multiple different platforms, and wherever you see this, which it looks like it's working, so that's good. Wherever you see this, if you reply to it, so whether that's on Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, I will be able to see the comments. So if you have any questions, then just reply to however you're seeing this, and I will look out for them and, try to answer them during this event today. So today we are talking about how to build a personal GPT. And this topic came up and I kind of slotted this in where I was going to do a content UX audit, but I decided to do this first because it's just timely with all that's happening in AI and marketing, but also because looks like there's some sort of streaming error here. So let me just make double sure that we're still working. Sorry about that if it has affected you. And if for whatever reason this isn't happening live, then I will definitely share the recording after. So I'm hoping that it's still streaming. But anyway, we're going to have to keep moving forward. So, this topic came up because I was at Denver Digital Summit a couple weeks ago, and I was speaking about SERP volatility, all the things that are happening, changing in the search engine results pages, especially in light of like the AI overviews. There's other things that they're experimenting with. There's other algorithm updates that are happening in line with, them sort of like dealing with this new AI world and like, should AI content rank and things like that. And we're not going to get really into that today. What I want to share with you is basically how to create an efficiency with AI that's based on the way that kind of like the things that you already have, like the documentation you've already created, just trying to spark some ideas for how you can create those efficiencies, how you can use AI for really what it's best at. And ultimately what really struck me, I think, was when I was giving this talk, and one of the things that I wanted to talk about was creating personal GPTs. I asked the room, like, how many of you have gone and actually created your own personal GPT, not just using ChatGPT, kind of like the standard way that many of us are used to. And I only saw a few hands go up. So I had questioned whether or not this topic was something that was going to be almost like too beginner for that audience, just because it really is so straightforward, and that's why I want to share it today. It's easy enough to demo because it really isn't super complicated to set up. The complicated part is probably training it to be exactly what you want after the fact, but at any rate, it seems like this is something that people are perhaps not aware of, that's even like a capability. It's not talked about super often. And so that's why we're going to talk about it today, and hope that, yes, the streaming is still working in some regard. I'm going to check just one more time. I'm just kind of making sure. I think it's working. Anyway, last thing that I'll say before we get into the main topic is next time we will be doing a content UX audit. So you can use this URL at the bottom, that blogsmith.tips/content UX. Note that Blogsmith doesn't have the vowels in it. And it just asks a couple quick questions about your content so that I can take the right approach to auditing it when we go live like this. And you can see some previous examples in my past events, my past posts. So anyway, let's go ahead and get to the meat and potatoes today. So let me switch my view here. Okay, the first thing I wanted to say was, coincidentally, right before I went live today, I was sent this women in AI marketing, like a list of like 100 plus women who are doing really cool things in AI marketing. So that it was just very timely and cool. And I think it's a cool list to look at to see kind of like all these different experiments that are happening. And yeah, it just happened to be right before we jumped on. So it brightened my day, and I wanted to share it with you for just getting inspiration, because I think that's what this topic is really about. At the end of the day, it's about, like, none of us are really expert at using AI, especially as consumers and not the people who have created these different models and these different user interfaces and applications and integrations and whatever. Commercial use of, like, robust AI tools is really a new thing. So we're all kind of figuring this out together. We're all just learning. And my goal for you today is to be inspired to create something yourself. Maybe not exactly what I'm showing you, although you could certainly follow along and do that too, just to get into the practice of it. But ultimately, using what you learn here to apply it to whatever would be most useful to you. So I started learning about this topic. I have to give credit to Zapier, because Zapier has this really excellent article. I would encourage you to check it out, How to Build Your Own Custom ChatGPT with OpenAI's GPT Builder. And then Zapier also has this function called AI Actions, where you can connect some of the other apps that you use on Zapier with ChatGPT and create kind of like this ecosystem where you can use ChatGPT to then set off actions in other tools that you use. I haven't gotten too deep into it. I've talked to their team a little bit about like ideas that I have and asked them how to implement it. And they, have a lot of cool ways of going about it. So definitely a great resource if you want to do something more advanced. But today we're going to keep it pretty simple. But this article is a good reference as you dig in on your own. All right, so ChatGPT, in order to create your own GPT, essentially you look at the sidebar when you just hit kind of like the main homepage of ChatGPT once you're logged in, and it will give you some different options to explore, like existing GPTs, as well as to then there will be an option to create your own GPT. I think I'm not going to show you my sidebar because I search and prompt with a lot of like very weird things. But you just go to your sidebar, click Explore GPTs, and then at the very top, it will give you the option to create your own. So you're looking for a button that says Create GPT. I believe they also have it in this article, so I could probably show you that here as well. So see kind of like in the sidebar where it has that Explore, and then there's a button that says Create GPT. So the one that I want to show you today how to make to sort of demonstrate this concept is I want to show you really, I guess, the first GPT I'd successfully made, which is basically a style guide editor bot. So a bot that I've built around the Blogsmith style guide that can be used by editors or writers on my team to quickly check style guidance. So it's not going to replace a human editor, and that's not why I made it. So I do want to be clear about that it's not, something that's going to like radically change my workflow. Instead, it's something that will help. The use case that I can see for this is that it's something that will help, say, a new editor who's getting up to speed with how we work. They haven't memorized all of the style guidance yet. Perhaps they never will. There's definitely a lot of it, or like a new writer. But I think it could also be useful for someone who's like a veteran on the team. They've been here for a while. And they're trying to remember some nuance and it's just not coming to them. And, maybe they don't have the exact keyword to then go into the document and search it. And so, this is a really great use case where they could just put a piece of copy into this bot and say, like, do you see any issue with this piece from this Blacksmith style perspective? So when you say you want to create a GPT, it'll give you either this screen. I'm going to copy this because this is the prompt I want to start with. Actually, I think it technically starts here. And so depending on how familiar you are with the process, which we're assuming you're not right now, let me just adjust the screen really quick. you could just start filling things out, and that's what you could do. I would recommend after you've done this a couple times, you could do that. But what I would really suggest, and I think what that Zapier article also goes into, is going into this create area where it will prompt you and then it will fill out this section for you. So let's go through that. So it starts with the prompts. I'll help you build a new GPT. It gives an example. What would you like to make? And so I'm just going to repaste that text that basically says, I want you to serve as an editor for the Blogsmith. This is a really important focus, I think, to consider whether you're creating a personal GPT or you're using ChatGPT in general. You kind of want to create a scope for it. You want it to understand the world in which it's supposed to operate to be useful to you. And so in this world, this GPT is an editor. So now it's prompting me to upload that style guide. So this is the Blacksmith style guide, at least the public-facing version of it, and you can check it out yourself if you go to theblogsmith.com/content-style-guide. We've organized it into these handy chapters so you can kind of jump around and see, you know, whatever's most relevant to what you want style guidance on. And this is built very industry agnostic. I mean, there's definitely things about B2B tech in there because those are the majority of the clients that we work with, but we really created it to be just a solid baseline, much like AP Style is a solid baseline for news journalism, and individual outlets have their own, you know, spins on that. Similar to the Blogsmith style guide, when we work with a client, we use this as our base, but then we also negotiate the differences between their style guide or like additional details. So we've also created this PDF version, which just going back to where we were, you can download the PDF as well. And because I've tested this before, I know that this PDF is something that ChatGPT will read. I will say from experience, the best documentation that you could give it is like the closest to plain text, or maybe not plain text, but like a Google Doc. I have previously tried to make a personal GPT or a custom GPT that I was including more like visual PDFs, and it had a really hard time reading the type on those. And I can give you that example after we get through here. All of that is to say that I know that this particular document will work. And so essentially another thing to understand when you're creating a personal GPT is if you want to give it like this knowledge base of documents that you want it to be able to reference for whatever queries you have. It does have a limit. I believe that it's 20 pages total, or 20 documents total, but you could always like, you know, splice PDFs together. I don't know what the ultimate file size limit is. So that's just something to keep in mind. So as you can see, it's kind of analyzing this doc. It's drawing some context from it. It's coming up with suggested prompt starters. That's something that over time you'll want to play around with, but it's okay to accept them for right now. And so it's asking me what I want to name it next. And I'm just going to go with that. That sounds good. I'm probably going to copy that prompt because it's going to ask me a couple things, and I'm more or less probably just going to agree with them just to show you what the process is. So yeah, so you set the scope. You might give it some documents to read. One thing that's also, I think, really important to understand about creating a personal GPT is whenever you upload a document, you gotta try to like help the GPT understand like why you're uploading it. Like as you're uploading it. So you're saying like, I'm uploading this because I want you to use it for this purpose. And then beyond that, you want to sort of check after you've uploaded it that it got it, that it's, you know, going to use it for that purpose. So just saying like, are you able to read this document, or like, what do you understand of like how you're supposed to use this? It might seem like an extra step, but sometimes I'll upload things and I think I'm giving it direction, but it's not really understanding it. So it is important to check for understanding after. And I mean, it'll be pretty clear too if you're trying to use your, you know, personal GPT a certain way and then it's not giving you expected results based on the documents, you know, you uploaded. That's also kind of a red flag that you need to go in and fix something. So now it's just kind of like refining how you're going to interact with it. And there's a couple questions here. So yeah, it's saying like, this particular GPT should ensure all content adheres to this provided style guide and provides clear feedback. I'm just going to say that sounds good. It's also saying that it's going to create like a specific image. So usually it does that in separate prompts. So that's a little bit different than normal from what I would expect. And it actually didn't update that image yet, because it's saying here, I'll create an image, but it hasn't actually done that yet. So that's kind of interesting. So then it's also asking about constraints. And what's interesting is like right before this live, I was going through this just to make sure that it's still the process that I remember, or, just kind of like practicing to see if there was anything I wanted to call out. And like the way that it's prompting me right now to configure this is different than it did 30 minutes ago. So that's also notable, and that's why you can also go in and configure it yourself. So it's giving some suggestions. Again, it's giving back kind of what that document shared in terms of what our style rules are. All of those are more or less in line with them. So I'm going to say that sounds good. Again, this is your opportunity. If you really want to dial in, you can, but you could do it later too. I think the most important thing is to just kind of like get to the end of this and then work on refinement. I think this is also important too. It's asking, how you want the GPT to interact with users. So it's giving some ideas here, providing constructive feedback, suggesting specific edits, maintaining a professional yet approachable tone. So like you could change the tone, right? Like maybe, this is like you're making this for like a really new editor, and so you want it to be like extra empathetic or something. Or, maybe you're giving this to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like another specific way. One thing I think I did on another GPT was it asked me if it should give like a very detailed response, or if it should just answer the question, but give an option to provide more context if the user wants to like expand, if there is more available. So that's something that's kind of interesting, because it's like you might be creating this bot because you just want it to quickly address something, but you might want to build in the capability for it to expand if somebody's interested. In this case, I'm going to say that sounds good. So it's updating. I don't think there's too much more after this. And again, it's interesting that it still doesn't have the image that it said it was going to create. So this is why ChatGPT is still such a wild card, right? Because it says one thing and then it does another. I'm going to say for this one, it's asking me a question. I'm going to say ask for clarification. I think that that's like generally a good thing to want your GPT to do, is to not make assumptions. Or if it's going to result in like a very different prompt one way or another, then they really should be asking you for clarification. I'm just going to say friendly here again, because it's asking for specifics. But I might just say like, you decide, right? At the end of the day, to finish this off so that we can get to something, so that we can test it, so that we can refine it. That's kind of the process. All right. So I think the next thing that's important is you kind of want to like make sure that it's like saved. It will save as a draft. So even if like you navigate out of this page before this step, you'll still have access to it as a draft. You can decide if you want to share it with other individuals on your team or otherwise. So that would be this anyone with the link. You could keep it just for you. And then you can also add it to the GPT store. I have not done that yet. So we're just going to do anyone with the link. I could probably do also only me for the sake of this one. So we've saved it. Now we have a link to it, and now we can actually use it. So just to show you, this is what the configuration settings look like based on how we created it. And I do have another version of this bot that's like the active version, and so it's going to look different from this, but I think this is, this is a really good first stab. And again, it's creating this more or less based off of this documentation I already had. I didn't have to adjust that style guide PDF for this GPT to be able to read it and make sense of it. And that's really the best thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to click this back arrow, and it'll take me to all my GPTs, and I'll probably talk about some of them afterwards, but this is the one that we just made, and I just wanted to get out of like that create area so you could see what it looks like as a GPT. So these were the suggested prompts. One definite limitation of ChatGPT in general is when it truncates them like this, because it's like, I don't really know what the rest of those words are, but we're going to go with it. So I found a specific prompt that I wanted to use here. We are working on an article right now that's in kind of like the final draft stages, and it's about whether generative AI is plagiarism or not. So the conclusion might give away our approach to it, but let's use one of the prompts. So it says, please review this paragraph for adherence to our style guide. Technically, it's more than a paragraph. So now it's going through and it's revising it. And again, like this prompt, it sometimes does different things. Sometimes it will revise it, but it won't explain what it's doing. Sometimes it provides, you know, the original copy and the revised copy and an explanation. So just like I said, I did like the same workflow like a half hour ago to test it out. This response to the same prompt is different because it doesn't show the two versions of the copy side by side. Maybe it learned something since then, because it's like I don't necessarily need to see this copy again, right? I've just provided it. So anyway, it's made edits, and now it's sharing the edits that it made. And you know, you might go further. I don't even know if this prompt is going to work, but can you bold any changes you made in the text? Just so you could see like where it made those changes. Okay, cool. So it is doing that. And I'm not going to check for accuracy right now because it's going to take too long. But what I can say is that these are all things that are mentioned in our style guide. So it's not just like editing it based on general style best practices, which could happen if it's not reading that PDF. It's going to like maybe try some sort of backup method to get you what you want here. But these are all things that are in our style guide and like specifically mentioned. So yeah, essentially that's how that works. That's kind of like the start to finish basic process of just, you know, setting it up, kind of accepting what it's giving you. I want to end here today by talking about some of these other GPTs and kind of like the thought behind them, so that, again, hopefully this inspires you to create something that's useful for you. And whether that's a, you know, style guide editor or something totally different, I think what I want you to consider is what documentation do you already have that you could reuse for this purpose. Our style guide is written very prescriptively. You know, it says this is what we do. Here's an example of what not to do. Here's an example of what to do with that context. Again, yeah, very prescriptive. And so any sort of documentation that you have that's very like rules based, you know, would do, I think, very well with a personal GPT, because that's something that it can understand, like the logic of it. And so with that in mind, I created another GPT that's similar. It's kind of like our approach to SEO. It's like our company knowledge of SEO, but also how we write about SEO, because it's very nuanced and we have to be careful and we have to have an approach that works so that like myself or the editors don't have to go in and like look very carefully for nuance. I mean, they do, but they need to have standards that they can follow so that they can quickly make decisions about, does this need to change? Is this accurate? Is it representing the information correctly? So that's what this bot is. It is also based off of just written guidelines we created for other purposes and now are using here. I think the style guide may also be a part of this particular bot. The first GPT I tried to make was a rules guide for Settlers of Catan, and this is where I took their PDF versions of their rules from their website, and I tried to add them all. And at first it was like, you have too many files, so I tried to combine them, and then it just like couldn't read the files. And what I wanted to create was something where I could ask a particular situation when we're in the middle of gameplay, like, is this a legal move or something like that? unfortunately, that was my first attempt. I have still not figured out what to do. I believe that I need plain text version of the rules for that to work. So I've given up on that for right now. And then probably the last one worth mentioning that's pretty functional at this point is this Blogsmith social media marketer. So I've also created very prescriptive rules for like my social media accounts and also the Blacksmith brand. And so again, I want to be clear that this doesn't like replace a person. This is more like, hey, we have this post and like it's good to go for LinkedIn. How could we adjust it for Twitter according to the style rules that I've defined? I guess the last one that's cool is this Blacksmith sales expert. I've been doing a lot of experiments with that where it's like getting it to help identify relevant portfolio samples, customize email templates, qualify certain brands and job leads. So that one is definitely probably the most advanced of all of these, but it's also like the one that I'm doing the most experimentation with. And you know, trying to use that like as part of my daily process. The rest of these are a lot more experimental and still, you know, tweaking to get where I want. So anyway, I think that's what I wanted to say today. I do not think this live stream worked at all, so I think it's going to be the recording that everybody gets, unfortunately. And I know people were really excited for this one. So, of course, today the live stream decided to not work live, but I hope that this is helpful. I'm definitely happy to answer any questions after the fact if you're seeing the recording of this. And I would love to hear your ideas for the personal GPTs that you're building. And let's all share knowledge and, you know, create efficiencies. I guess at the end of the day, the last thing that I want to say about this particular topic is like AI is a tool, but don't let it be a crutch. AI can get you really effectively from step 1 to step 2. It cannot effectively get you from step 1 to step 10. So like figure out how it works best in your process and then use it as a tool to make you more efficient. Again, here's that link for our content UX audits, which will be next time, 2 weeks from now. And yeah, sorry that this apparently couldn't be live today, but I hope you enjoy the recording. Thanks. Bye.